This is a new BYD Han, which is a fully electric mid-size luxury sedan from the Chinese automaker BYD. You can't buy this car in America right now, and you won't be able to in the future either, which is a bit of a shame because we're missing out on some truly amazing quirks and features.
So you're interested in Chinese EVs. Perhaps you've seen the flashy adverts, all the new brands coming out of China, all the advanced technology and development that they seem to possess. Perhaps you've seen some big name reviewers looking at the latest BYD models, or Neo, or whatever the case may be, fawning over the features. Well, this is a video that will tell you that it's a bunch of BS. So China is ahead of the game when it comes to EVs. In many ways. One of those ways is that China's ahead of the game when it comes to EVs catching on fire and spontaneously combusting. And there are reasons for this. Quality control's kind of lax. Shortcuts are taken. But let's talk about the good before we get into the bad, because we're going to be looking at a lot of clips here of Chinese EVs catching on fire, doing dangerous things, and, well, by the end of this, you probably realize that there's still a very long way to go before a Chinese EV can be trusted at all. Even the best and biggest brands like this BYD burning to the ground behind me here. But before we get into all the explosive action, a word from our sponsor. Hitting the roads in a car is like entering a battlefield. You never know when the unpredictable may happen. A drunk driver, someone distracted by their phone, or even just someone who shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car. To combat this, we equip our cars with many safety features, not just one. We have seatbelts, crumple zones, airbags, ABS, and so much more. And now, it's time to treat internet safety in the same way. And this is where today's sponsor Gaudio comes in. As we hit the information superhighway, we also risk running into malware, hackers, identity thieves, scammers, and malicious code. Gaudio is here to protect you. It's a browser plugin that acts as your first line of defense, blocking malicious attacks before they even happen. Remember, our browsers contain all of our personal information, from our banking details, browsing habits to our passwords. Gaudio shields you from scam sites, phishing attempts, pop-ups, and will notify you in real time of information leaks connected to you. Gaudio is super easy to use and install. Once installed, it will run a quick security check to detect any existing threats. This can be a real eye-opener. It certainly was for me, as it'll show you what existing information of yours is already at risk or compromised. After the initial scan, you'll have a 7-day free trial in which to remove these threats and enable real-time protection and get to know the software. Gaudio's identity protection is cross-platform, giving you real-time alerts on your mobile so that you can act immediately should a data leak occur. Go to guard.io/Serpenza. It only takes 30 seconds to install, and one Gaudio account covers 5 family members, even your mom, who keeps thinking that she's won a lottery in the UK and it'll only cost a fraction of the winnings to pay the international transfer fees. Join over 1 million people who have already installed Gaudio today. Go to guard.io/Serpenza and you'll get 20% off their already affordable monthly subscription. Link is in the description. And now, back to the show. So I thought we'd start with the big boys, BYD, or BYD as it is pronounced in Chinese. And BYD is one of the biggest automakers in China, and probably the most well-known. In fact, Warren Buffett himself backed this company, and everybody sees it as the flagship when it comes to Chinese autos, especially EVs. So I've put together a compilation of BYD-only clips that we're going to take a look at together over here. So this was not that long ago in Shenzhen, a new BYD model burning to the ground while charging. And of course, you can see just how much effort it takes to put out an EV fire. You see, without getting too complicated, when you drive around in your internal combustion engine car, you're carrying your fuel with you, of course, the petrol. But that's only half of your energy source. The other half is the air, which gets mixed with it together to create the combustion. It's all science, but basically, you're only actually carrying half of the energy in your car in fuel. And it takes quite a lot to ignite that. It needs a proper spark. You actually need to go in and set fire to the fuel. When it comes to electric cars, you're carrying all of the energy in the battery pack, like everything. You're not mixing anything else from the outside into it. So you're carrying this immense amount of energy around with you. And there are various things that can cause it to erupt. Obviously, if it gets punctured, if you're in an accident, there's a serious risk of it going off, as we've seen a number of times in the past. But of course, any kind of electrical short in the system can cause this thing to go bad. And this is why electric vehicles are more prone to catching on fire than a regular internal combustion engine. But on top of that, the way that the energy gets released is really scary when you've got one of these big battery packs that catch on fire or that get punctured, etc. Anyway, let's take a look at a couple of BYD clips here.
天哪，充电车着火啦！太不安全了，千万别。
So she's saying, oh my god, 充电车, so it's like the charge energy car has caught on fire. It's so unsafe. Anyway, that's also a BYD model down there. Anyway, she's just concerned that it's going to explode. Sorry, she's just concerned that it's going to explode there. But this is not an uncommon sight in and around China. Now, I did a lot of work when it came to electric bikes, and I used to mess around with e-bikes and scooters, and those things catch fire all the time too. And that's because it's impossible to really regulate that industry. When it comes to electric bikes, there's so many knockoffs and random brands that are made in tiny little factories all over the place that regulations just, well, they don't exist. So they can do anything they want to take shortcuts when it comes to the battery production or the circuit boards or whatever. So you get a lot of these things catching on fire, just outright exploding, melting down, and they're a fire hazard. They really are. So much so that you're not allowed to take electric vehicles, even the small little foldable bikes, onto the public transport in China anymore, in the big cities, and it's just one of those things. But when it comes to the electric vehicles, as you can see this one burning down behind me, it's really more of the same thing. Right now, there's a rush to create EVs in China. And so you've got all these different brands coming out of the woodwork and these upstart companies that are busy getting investment from overseas and investment from just about everywhere to create the next biggest EV. And well, you can understand that a lot of shortcuts are being taken, and the result, of course, is what you see on the screen behind us. But this is BYD. This is the particular model that you just seen burned down. And here is one of their flagship SUVs that was on the back of a truck busy being taken somewhere. And, you know, you can see it just catching on fire. If you take a close look, you can actually see the sparks emanating from underneath the vehicle. And this is, of course, terrifying because there's really very little you can do with these massive electric fires. Just pouring water on it doesn't do anything. And I'm sure you'll notice that whenever you see firefighters trying to put out an electric vehicle fire, it takes a huge amount of water and whatever else to actually put these things out, and manpower. So it's not a normal thing. And you'll see just how devastating this can be in some of these clips. So yes, this is a top-of-the-line flagship SUV from BYD. I'll actually put up the model on the screen so you can see which one it is. And you'll see that this is quite a common one to catch on fire, actually, because I've got multiple clips that show this exact same model catching on fire.
Oh.
Over here, again, another BYD SUV that's catching on fire. And of course, there you have the fire department trying to put it out and keep it safe. And this, as you saw in the intro, is the BYD Han, which has been handed out to a lot of very high-profile car reviewers around the world. And here you can see it catching on fire on the streets of China. How about we move on to another model of BYD here that you can see burning in the background. I think you can pick up a little bit of a trend here, is that these things do combust. And this, again, is the top brand. This is the best EV brand coming out of China. That's got the biggest and longest history because BYD has been around for a very long time. In fact, when I got to China back in 2006, I saw lots of BYDs driving around, but they all looked like BMWs, or at least the logo did, because BYD stole its original logo from BMW, and even the name BYD is kind of a knockoff of BMW. But that was BYD back in the day. Of course, it has evolved and gotten better over time. So what I'm saying is BYD is one of China's most prestigious brands with the longest history, with the most amount of quality control, with the most amount of resources and R&D and factories and testing and all that kind of stuff. And you still see their brand new flagship EVs catching fire all over China. And it does beg the question, all these reviewers, these big name reviewers that review all these cars, why have none of them mentioned this fact? This very simple fact that BYD EVs catch fire and burn down all the time in China. And here's the thing. Let's take a look at this next clip over here. Not only do the cars themselves catch fire, but they also are a massive hazard because if they park next to anything, like for instance this building, they catch the building on fire. There was a small shop just right in front of where this BYD was parked. This is another BYD that caught fire. And it actually set the shop on fire and the whole sort of first floor started to catch on fire and burn there. It's really putting people's lives at risk, not just the cars and any potential passengers or drivers inside of the cars. I mean, this is some serious stuff, and it took hours to put this out because, like I've said earlier, electrical fires just are almost impossible to put out with conventional means. I mean, look at all the fire extinguishers they're using here, and the flames just keep on going. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
把电线先整了，电线啊，电线。上楼上边，空调呢那边。这整的，这个好视频啊。
Well, to give you a bit of running commentary on what's going on here, the guy's shouting, quickly, the electrical wires, and now the air conditioner, put it out. Oh, look, it's still burning. Put it out. Oh, no, that kind of thing. And you can see the chaos. This thing just won't go out. And I wanted to point out that this is another one of those Tang SUVs. You know, the flagship SUV, the 2022 model that we saw burning on the back of that trailer? Same car.
离道，哎，关键是离道，哎，这车风，搁风啊，这是，要不着了啊，水箱爆炸了，油箱爆炸的废了。离道。
Thought we were done with BYD, you're wrong. Here again, we have the lovely BYD Han, and we see it catching fire on the highway. Awesome. Doesn't only stop with passenger vehicles, though. The BYD buses themselves, they're not immune to catching on fire, as you can see here. And, you know, this is very scary because this is the public transport. They're always crammed with people on the streets. And I'd like to, before we get into the fact that we've got their latest prototype over here from BYD catching on fire too, I would like to talk about the whole public transport stuff. Because, you know, that's one of the things that I must commend China with, is the fact that they really do implement things in a big way. When they decide to do something, they do it. But the unfortunate thing is that when you just go ahead and do something, you very often overlook the reason why you shouldn't have just done it in the first place. Let me give you this example. Okay, they decided that they wanted to roll out electric vehicles in the cities. And the city that I lived in for 14 years, Shenzhen, they decided to go fully electric as far as their buses and taxi fleets were concerned. And so they did, in certain areas anyway, like the downtown areas. And they just rolled them out. They rolled out the BYD taxis. I've actually got footage of myself driving in these things over a decade ago. And they rolled out the buses. But of course, there were issues. People did die. These things did catch on fire. But like all bad news in China, this stuff doesn't really get out there. It gets suppressed. I mean, take a look. You're looking at a train fire, a high-speed rail fire. You haven't heard about that, have you? All you ever hear about trains in China is how amazing they are and how the infrastructure is second to none and incredible. You don't hear about the accidents and the fires and things like that because it's suppressed. The local press doesn't even talk about it, and certainly it's not allowed to hit international press, which is, again, why all you see about Chinese EVs is flashy, good, cool stuff, but you never hear about these fires. So back to their latest prototype here, catching fire. I mean, come on, guys. This is the newest and greatest and latest thing coming out of BYD, and they can't even stop that catching fire. There's definitely an issue here when it comes to quality control and safety. Speaking of quality control and safety, this is a very important clip over here. Here we have a multi-car pileup. We've got a Tesla, you know, the SUV, one with the gull-wing doors. We've got an older Mercedes-Benz, and we have a BYD SUV, fairly new model. In fact, that is, I think, their flagship model over there. Now, there's something important to note here. All three cars had front impact damage, severe damage. I mean, you can see the damage of the cars here. But if you look closely, the Tesla and, of course, the Mercedes-Benz, the airbags all deployed. Okay, there you can see the airbag and the Mercedes. Here you can see the multiple airbags all over the Tesla over here. It sure does have a lot of airbags. But let's take a look at the BYD in the background there. Remember, this is not an old car. You can actually see the steering wheel. According to the person who shot this video, none of the airbags in the BYD deployed. And look, the whole front end of the thing is missing. So that's worrying. And that's the unfortunate truth when it comes to Chinese cars, is that as fancy as they look and as fancy as they might seem with all their features and quirks and so on, they still lack when it comes to quality. I mean, I should know. I owned a Chinese car for about 10 years. I bought it brand new, and that thing was rubbish. A brand new car, and things that shouldn't break on a car broke on that car. During, the first year I owned it, the aircon compressor stopped working. A brand new vehicle. Rubber that shouldn't perish and normally takes 10, 20 years before you get problems with it, started to perish after 2 years. Things like hoses and stuff. Lots of problems with that car, but that's another story, and I've told it before. The fact of the matter is, though, that's scary. No airbags deployed after an accident like that in the BYD, and yet the other vehicles, they're fine. How about this clip? This BYD, again, it's a BYD. I know I'm picking on BYD, but we'll get to the other brands, don't worry. The door just fell off. That's great. Great. But now, here's another thing. What is the one thing that you probably don't want to go wrong when you're driving a vehicle? You probably don't want the wheels to fall off. In fact, the whole rear axle to fall off with the wheels. That's probably not what you're looking for in a car. And this, again, is one of BYD's new crossovers. It's kind of their entry-level crossover SUV thing, but it's a new model. And driving down the road and the wheels just come off, not good. That's a quirk and feature that I could do without. I thought we'd round off the BYD stuff with this clip, which I think is, again, very self-explanatory. Let's take a look. I'll just quickly tell you what the subtitles say there. It says, 几个月, this BYD, so it means like a couple of months old BYD. 刹车突然失灵, which basically means the brakes suddenly failed.
跑了7300公里.
Okay, so it says it's got 7,300 kilometers on it. So it's a very new car is basically what we're saying here. I don't know what that is in miles. I'll put it up on the screen. But let's take a look.
电也断不了.
You can't turn it on.
断电也断不了. 后备箱也打不开.
He can't open the trunk. He can't disengage the parking brake. He's basically screwed. He's basically screwed. So the thing just broke down on the side of the road. His couple of months old BYD. Again, this is that flagship Han vehicle.
BYD Han.
You know, it's supposed to be really cool. And everything's kind of broken. He can't turn it on. He can't disengage the brake. He can't open the trunk. I mean, this is the quality control that we're looking at here. So let's give BYD a break here. I know that we got to move on to some other brands. So here we have a Southeast DX7. Southeast is another fairly big brand in China, and that's their crossover model over there. It's catching on fire on the side of the road. Over here we have something called a Weltmeister. Again, there's so many EV companies starting up, and a lot of them are in conglomeration with other big automotive brands in China. It's a big rush for investment. But again, you know, these things just catching on fire while charging or just parked. It's really scary. Here we have another one of those weird startups. It's called a Leap Motor. This one, of course, again, self-combusted in the middle of nowhere, and you've got the fire trucks there trying to put it out. I mean, I think you're starting to see a pattern here. A lot of these things are burning to the ground, and it's not just an isolated case here or there. This is something that's happening a lot. Okay, those were some interesting startups you've probably never heard of, but what about China's most premium brand? I'm talking about the Rolls-Royce of China, the one that Xi Jinping uses, the car that you always see him standing in there, you know, with his microphones, driving around and, you know, waving listlessly at the troops. Well, you know, the Hongqi is what it's called, and they've got a premium SUV, which is a knockoff of a Rolls-Royce. Let's take a look at how that one does. Well, not that much better. Here you can see it caught fire while charging. And this is, like I said, the Rolls-Royce of Chinese EVs. It's the best of the best. And not even they are immune. That's, yeah, that's quite devastating over there. So, what can we take away from this video? Other than the fact that you don't want to pile your family into a Chinese EV for a long road trip. Well, I'd like you to take away the following. Stop believing the hype. China keeps putting out this slick propaganda about how they've got these really advanced technologies, how the Chinese green technologies out there and the windmills and the solar panels and the electric vehicles. It's all a smokescreen and a bunch of BS. China right now is investing more money in massive coal-burning power plants and technologies that actually pollute the world more than do any good. So as much as they have this big green tech smokescreen, it is really just all smoke and mirrors. This is the kind of thing that we discuss on our show every week, and I'd love for you to join me there. It's called The China Show, and this is where we keep you up to date on the latest things coming in and out of China, keep you up to date with the news, keep you up to date with the things that are happening on the Chinese internet, the fun stuff, the terrible stuff, everything in between. Hope to see you there this Friday. Hope to see you there every Friday. And also don't forget that I have a secret show every Monday, which you can find in the links below. Guys, until next time, unlike Chinese EVs, which still have a very long way to go before they catch up to the rest of the world, stay awesome.
How foreigners become Chinese CCP shills
or
by
just
famous by starting by eating Chinese spicy food, spicy chicken feet to genocide denial, right?
Super spicy.
That's such a bullshit fake like reaction. I cringe out when I see this.
Yeah,
shit.
me too.
It's so fake. Oh my god,
Isn't it?
I want to die.
Isn't it cringe? Right underneath Tibet in a nutshell, it's like flag raising ceremony in Tiananmen Square, Beijing. Xinjiang, dancing happy Uyghurs.
Oh jeez, she's making me sick.
Anyway, let's take a look at what
I can't watch his shit.
Well,
it actually makes me uncomfortable.
Just come on, dude.
Off.
Seriously?
Full of shit. They started with chili, spicy food, and you end up a shill.